Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into language learning, habits, all that good stuff. And we've got a unique angle, right? Like all these sources we're looking at are from one person, an English teacher, who is also learning a language themselves.
Yeah, like they're walking the walk,
Yeah.
not just talking about it from a teacher's perspective, but actually going through the process.
Exactly. And it's not just textbook stuff either. I mean, this creator, they've lived abroad, connected with all sorts of people. You can feel those highs and lows, those frustrations, the joys of learning a new language come through in their words.
It makes it real, doesn't it? Makes you feel like, hey, I'm not alone in this struggle.
Right. And one thing that jumped out at me, this creator is like obsessed with time. They're super clear. If you want to be fluent, you got to put in the time, the effort. But there's a but.
Uh-oh, with skets.
They're equally obsessed with having fun while you learn. They actually say straight up, if you don't have fun, it is harder to learn English.
Makes you think,
Yeah.
right? Like maybe they struggled with that themselves. Maybe they're speaking from experience, knowing how easily boredom can, derail the whole process.
Makes their advice that much more relatable. Like, hey, been there, done that. Let's make this enjoyable so you actually stick with it. And they've got some good tips for that, making language learning less of a chore.
Yeah, like reading stuff you actually like, watching cool videos, finding people to chat with, all that. Not exactly groundbreaking, but
But it's the emphasis on making it personal. Find what you're into, sports, fashion, whatever, and use that as your learning tool.
exactly. If you're genuinely interested,
Yeah.
you're not just memorizing, you're connecting, like having those aha moments that actually stick.
Now, buckle up because this creator, they are all about routine. And I'm not talking about your casual morning coffee routine. This is next level, super structured, plan to the minute stuff.
Whoa, really? Like,
Yeah.
how detailed are we talking?
Weekday breakdown 6 to 6 pay 10 p.m. wake up, lights out by 10 p.m., the whole shebang. Kind of surprising, right? You wouldn't necessarily picture someone so into connecting with people being so, well, rigid.
It's like a fascinating paradox. So what does this super routine look like?
Okay, so studying Indonesian in the morning, fruit for the first meal. Work starts at 7:30 sharp. I mean, it's specific, but there's this adorable detail, milk and cookies after dinner.
Okay, that's pretty cute. Kind of humanizes the whole robot schedule thing, right? Makes me wonder, does this routine contribute to their success in language learning? Like, is there something to that?
That's a great question. It really makes you think about the whole learn by immersion idea versus make time for focused study. And speaking of different approaches, let's talk exercise. This creator, they're into it, all kinds running, weights, hiking, but especially outdoorsy stuff. Maybe there's a connection there, exploring new places, exploring new languages.
Ooh, I like that. It's like seeing language as a new terrain, a new landscape to discover. And maybe that discipline, that endurance you need for running, it translates to learning too.
And speaking of exploration, they dive into all sorts of homes, houses, apartments, the whole spectrum. But one thing that really stuck out, they mention average house prices in California. Get this, $600,000. Makes you think about economic realities, right?
Definitely. Like, not everyone has a quiet study room in a giant house.
Mhm.
Makes you wonder if that influences how they teach, how they think about resources for language learning.
It's a good reminder that language learning shouldn't be like a luxury. It should be accessible to everyone, no matter where they live or their financial situation.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that are universally relatable, let's talk pets. This creator, they open up about their experiences with all kinds of animals. Dogs, cats, even a funny bit about being allergic to cats. Even language experts have their kryptonite.
So relatable. But the most unexpected thing, they talk about eating guinea pig in Peru.
Whoa, okay, now that's a cultural difference. Makes you realize what we consider a pet here might be dinner somewhere else. Do you think they bring that kind of cultural awareness into their teaching?
That's a great question. It would definitely add a whole other layer of understanding, right? To be able to appreciate those differences, especially when you're learning a new language, trying to connect with another culture.
It's a good reminder that language isn't just words and grammar. It's about understanding the people behind those words.
Right. Ready to enter the digital world. This creator, they break down social media and they really focus on Facebook. It's fascinating how they go through its history, starting in 2004, to how it's this global thing now.
It really shows you how fast technology changes things. Does the creator ever talk about using social media for language learning, I wonder?
That's a good question. I'm curious to see if they touch on the pros and cons, like the potential for connection, but also for distraction.
It's all about finding that balance, right? Using those tools in a way that actually benefits you.
And they don't just stop at Facebook. They touch on Instagram too, especially how visual it is, how popular it is with like the younger crowd. Makes you wonder, do different platforms work better for different types of learners?
That's an interesting thought. Like, if you're a visual learner, maybe Instagram is your jam. But if you're more into words, maybe Twitter's the way to go. It would be cool to see some research on that, how different platforms affect how we learn languages.
Yeah, like do you learn different vocabulary on Instagram versus Twitter? I'd be curious to see what they have to say about other platforms. Like do they mention Twitter and Snapchat at
Oh,
all?
for sure. They talk about those too. I'm especially interested to see if they bring up the whole echo chamber thing.
Mhm.
How social media can sometimes just reinforce what you already believe instead of exposing you to new ideas.
It's tricky, right? Like social media can be great for connecting with people, but it can also trap you in this bubble. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. The creator also talks about New Year's resolutions. They mention the usual suspects: losing weight, learning English, reading more, all that jazz. It's all about self improvement, right? Wanting to be better.
Totally. Like, New Year's resolutions are basically a wish list for the best version of yourself. And it's interesting, right, how learning English is often on that list. Shows you how many people want to connect with others, open up new possibilities. But the big question is, how do you actually make those resolutions stick?
That's where the rubber meets the road, right? It's easy to make a list, but actually sticking to it, that's the hard part. I wonder if they connect that back to their whole routine thing. Like, could that structured approach help with any resolution, not just language learning?
I think so, definitely. That consistency, that dedication, making time for things, it's all transferable, right? Whether it's losing weight, learning a new skill, whatever, you got to be intentional about it.
So maybe the big lesson here isn't just about language learning. It's about applying that mindset to any area of your life where you want to grow, being mindful of your time, using it to achieve your goals.
Absolutely. The powerful reminder that we're not just passengers, we're the drivers of our own lives. We have the power to shape our own destinies.
Okay, I want to circle back to that intense daily routine for a sec. I mean, it's impressive, but do you think there's a danger in being too rigid? Like, could it stifle your creativity, make you less spontaneous?
That's a good point. You got to find that balance, right? Like, routine can be great for structure, but you don't want to become a slave to it. Maybe the key is to see it as a framework, not a set of unbreakable rules.
And don't forget the milk and cookies. Even the most disciplined person needs a little treat now and then, right? It's about finding that sweet spot between structure and letting loose, enjoying the ride.
Exactly. Life's too short to be all business all the time.
All right, let's talk exercise. I love how they explore all these different options: running, weightlifting, hiking. It's all about finding something you actually enjoy doing, right? That's how you stay motivated.
Totally. Exercise shouldn't be punishment. It should be something that makes you feel good. And I like how they emphasize trying different things, because what works for one person might not work for another. It's all about finding your own groove.
And they don't shy away from talking about their struggles with running either. It makes them more relatable. Like even fitness buffs have bad days. It's not about being perfect, it's about showing up and doing the work even when it's tough.
It's that consistency, that dedication that pays off in the long run. Just like with language learning, you got to be in it for the long haul.
Speaking of consistency, let's jump into their thoughts on homes. They get pretty detailed about the differences between houses and apartments, all the pros and cons, especially when it comes to finances. What stuck out to you in that conversation?
Well, that $600,000 price tag for a house in California, that was definitely a shocker. Really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? Makes you think about affordability, how hard it can be to find a decent place to live.
Definitely. And it makes you appreciate their focus on making language learning accessible no matter what your budget is. But I also liked how they talked about sharing an apartment with roommates. It's something so many of us go through, right? And it's not always easy, but you learn a lot about compromise, communication, all those important life skills.
It's like a crash course in getting along with other people, figuring out how to live in harmony, even when you have different habits and preferences.
And they touched on condos and townhouses too. It's interesting to see how the housing market is always trying to come up with new options, trying to cater to different lifestyles and budgets.
It's like a constant evolution, trying to find the perfect balance between affordability, space, and location. There's always something new popping up to try to meet those needs.
And let's not forget about our furry friends. This creator's stories about their pets were so heartwarming. Dogs, cats, even a gecko that ate live crickets. What a range.
It's like a mini zoo. You can tell they have a genuine love for animals, which I think ties into their love for connecting with people too.
It definitely shows a curious and open mind. And speaking of open minds, remember that anecdote about trying guinea pig in Peru? Talk about a cultural eye-opener.
Whoa, yeah. Makes you realize that what we consider a pet in one place might be dinner in another. It's a good reminder to check our assumptions at the door, especially when we're exploring new languages and cultures.
It's all about expanding our horizons, right? But amidst all those exotic animal encounters, that story about their dog really got to me. It just shows the incredible bond we can have with animals.
It's universal, isn't it? That love and companionship transcends language and culture. Okay, let's jump into the digital world for a bit. I was really impressed with their breakdown of social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, they covered it all.
They really nailed the essence of each platform, didn't they? Like how Facebook is all about connecting with people you know, while Instagram is more visual, more about sharing experiences.
It's fascinating how each platform has evolved to fill a specific niche. And can you believe Facebook started all the way back in 2004?
I know, right? It feels like it's been around forever, but it's actually a relatively new invention that's completely changed how we interact.
It just shows how quickly technology can shape our world.
Speaking of shaping our world, let's talk about New Year's resolutions. They mentioned some pretty common ones: losing weight, learning a new language, reading more, all those self-improvement goals.
I love how they highlight that desire to be better, to grow. It's something so many of us share, no matter what our background is.
And the creator's own journey with language learning is a great example of how dedication and passion can lead to amazing things.
Absolutely. Their focus on routine and time management is definitely inspiring. But I think the key takeaway is that it's all about finding what works for you. Not everyone thrives on strict schedules, and that's okay.
It's about finding your own rhythm, your own way to make progress. And hey, maybe a little bit of milk and cookies along the way doesn't hurt either.
Exactly. A little bit of indulgence makes the journey that much sweeter.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today, from the nitty-gritty of language learning to the bigger picture of how we live our lives. It's been a fascinating exploration.
And as we wrap things up, I have one final question for our listeners to ponder. If you could take one thing from this creator's approach, whether it's their dedication to routine, their love for connecting with people, or even their fondness for milk and cookies, what would it be and how might it make your own life richer?
What a great thought to leave everyone with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.